Okay, it's noon Tuesday, September 22nd. Welcome to the Forget Computers live stream. We've got Chad Calise with us, Wyatt Russell, Michelle Charles, and myself, Ben Greiner. And we're finally getting to something we've been talking about for a while. We're going to talk about macOS Big Sur, what that means. That's the new operating system from Apple that they've been talking about for a while. We're also going to talk a little bit about browsers and why it's going to do a demo on and just a discussion around browsers because this is something that comes up a lot on the support desk. And then I also want to have a little, if, for anyone who read my invite, a small rant about collaborating online. And so I'll start with that rant. And that rant is I have been working a lot with a team of people passing spreadsheets back and forth. And every time I see that, I try to get the team to put the spreadsheet online so we can all collaborate online. I would say today there's very few reasons to not collaborate with a spreadsheet online. Almost everybody has Microsoft Office or Google or sometimes both. Both of those platforms, and even Apple allows you to collaborate through numbers online. It's a little more limited. You have to use an Apple ID or you have to have Box. The collaboration won't work anywhere else. But it's so much easier to collaborate on a spreadsheet with multiple people involved, or even two people, when you can put it online and you can both guarantee you're looking at the same content and making the edits. Obviously, security is a concern, but with the proper password and two-factor authentication and the sharing options that are provided to you, there's really no reason not to do that. I mean, as soon as you send something through email as an attachment and that person makes an edit, they're the only ones with that edit, and then they have to pass it back and forth. It's just a mess. Collaboration online is so much nicer. Is there a counterpoint to that, Chad? Anyone want to argue against me? Anyone want to raise their hand?
No, I think it's also a battle of taste. The battle of tastes will never be won. Yeah,
I think I think there are habits more than taste in this case
yeah,
because
that's a good
it's just
point. That's
so
a good one.
easy to do what we've always done, which is I'll send that to you in a spreadsheet or in an email attachment. And it
It's
does
true.
take a little extra effort that first time, to get logged in and to find it online and to get into the habit of going to it online. But oh man, it is so much more streamlined when you're doing it as a group online than when you're just passing it
That's
back
really
and forth.
true. That's really true. I mean, the amount of time, I think it's easy, myself, I can only speak for myself. When I think about things that I really don't like security, right? It's really
Yeah.
inconvenient. I think about things that I have to do, like when I'm carrying, two armfuls of groceries in my house, and it's locked, and I have to, get out my key, and it's a real hassle. And I'd love to make that convenient. I really would, but I know that there's a trade-off involved, and there are some tools and some things that we have figured out that are really friendly and really have an excellent return for the trouble, right? Because if we're going to go through the trouble of something, we should get we should get something in return for that counts, right? We shouldn't be just doing security for theater, for example, right? That sucks, right? Paying a lot of money
Yeah.
and going through a lot of hoo-ha ritual for security, doing security, when really, to me, it's not so much about tools as it is about behavior. And so you're absolutely right, Ben. I mean, it is about habits, and how do we shape better habits, and how can we choose tools that are going to, help us shape those habits.
So my recommendation is, especially for those listening or those on the call, if you see a team member, start on the inside with your own team. If you see a team member sending you an attachment that could be collaborated with online, you know, put that document online, share that link with them. If you don't know how to do that, reach out to our team. We can help you. But take the initiative to start building those new habits. In this one example I was working with, uh, there were three people involved. One of them got in, no problem. The other person didn't. And of course, they wanted to give up right away because, like, I can't get access to that online. Well, it turns out that their email address that they were using was not their login address for Office 365. So once we figured that out, I just needed to share they're using their login name versus the email address they were publicly using. And then they were able to authenticate. And then they were able to get in, and then it was a much greater, nicer experience. So that's my rant. I know not everyone's going to do it, but I strongly encourage it and recommend it. And we're here to support you if you're having any issues collaborating online. Okay. What I wanted to move on to next before we get to the browser discussion is just a very brief introduction to Big Sur, Mac OS Big Sur. And I'm going to share
Makes
my
me want to
screen
sing
first.
Big
Yeah,
Sur, like some
yeah, I'm going to share
Western,
my
Wild
screen.
West.
So
What do you think
Ben, just
of?
to clarify,
Yeah.
maybe for those that aren't don't know yet, it is officially now Big Sur and not OS 11.
I don't
Do we
know. Is
know?
it? I mean, I
I'm
think they
not
still
sure. I
have the
was
numbers.
wondering.
11
They
would be cool.
I think they will continue to have the numbers, and I actually prefer the numbers because I know 1014 comes before 1015, and then 1016 or 11. It's sequential, makes sense to me. The naming system, I get confused. I can't remember, all the different names and where they fall. Although I can tell you, Mac OS Big Sur is coming, and whatever number they decide it's going to be
Okay.
is fine with me. What I wanted to talk about is this is an article we posted about a year ago when Catalina came out, and it's titled "We Recommend You Delay Upgrading to Mac OS 1015 Catalina." And when Big Sur comes out, typically in October, looks like Catalina came out a year ago, October 7th, 2019. Typically, when a Mac OS comes out, there's a real struggle because a lot of people, first of all, Apple advertises this and really pushes it and really encourages people to update or upgrade. It is an upgrade. For those of you that don't know, updates are incremental mini patches and fixes. Upgrades are entire jumps, and this is an upgrade. So there's a big battle because Apple has made it free and they made it easy to upgrade. But what people don't understand, especially in the business world, is that there are huge repercussions for adopting a new upgrade too early. And you'll get people touting day one support and day one adoption, and that's cool and sounds great. But if you rely on your computer for to make a living, I would not adopt anything on day one. Even if you want to be one of the cool kids, I would not do it. There are just too many things that could go wrong with it. So I'm showing you this article because I believe if we scroll down to the bottom, I posted something that I borrowed from an Apple podcast. About 8 months ago, looks like I posted this, and this is kind of. I thought this was a good example of how Apple, releases things. The initial release gets new thing. Okay, so the initial release is always a .o. They're gonna release it later in October. People who adopt it are going to be those that. Sorry, let me zoom in. Those that are early adopters, and then we're going to quickly see a bunch of patches. And the first patch is kind of the initial release to get the promised new things. The initial release gets the promised new things out there. Okay, so I'm confusing what I'm saying. The initial release is just to say, hey, this is it. We've been talking about it for 6 months. This is it. It's got all the new features. We're going to talk about some of those in a minute. And then it's soon followed up by a fix of what Apple employees found wrong. A fix meaning Apple employees have been running this a lot longer than any of us have, chances are. Now, we also have a beta program we're involved with, so we are running it, and I'll show you that in a minute. But pretty much they put out a fix to squash some of those bugs. And then the third release fixes what external developers found wrong, meaning after the initial release. And then the fourth one fixes the urgent things actual customers reported, people like all of you who maybe install this on your home computer early on and report problems. And then 5 is typically a stable release ready for mass adoption in the workplace. And if I were to scroll back up to the top of this article, you can see that beginning with 10.15.4 versus the .5 that's typical, we actually started recommending it slightly early. But beginning with 10.15.4, we feel it's safe to upgrade. So my point is, it is normal for Apple to release an operating system and then iterate or fix. And by the fourth or fifth fix, it's typically good. That also gives companies time, like Adobe, Extensys, even Microsoft, time to get up to speed. So all those people who say we have day one adoption, we're so cool, we have day one adoption. They are people who either have spare machines that they can play with and experiment with, or they truly live almost entirely in the web and they don't rely on Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator or InDesign or fonts, Extensys, Suitcase. They don't rely on those apps that, even if Adobe did their due diligence, may still have problems on day one. So I can't stress that enough. That's why we don't encourage day one adoption. And when this comes out, we do our best to try to prohibit people in a friendly way from running the OS upgrade. But if you need to, if you have a spare Mac and you do want to experiment with this, and you're not on the beta program, when this is eventually released, let us know. We can make an exception for that computer. We can get you on the new operating system. You can start running it. But I would do the due diligence of making sure it's solid before you put it on your work machine. Does that make sense? Did I mince my words or just make it more confusing for anyone?
Well, I think that was really clear, Ben. I think the big takeaway is, if it's not broken, don't fix it. When it comes to the shiny new thing that comes out.
At least
because,
not
as you
on
pointed
day
out,
one
we
or
spend
week
a
one.
lot of time getting our clients, working with fonts and all of the different software that everyone uses, and all those little components, like you said, can just blow up with that new release.
Even
so well done.
Printing. I know we're not printing as much now that we're all working from home, but printing could be an issue. I've even seen the collaboration tools I just mentioned. Sometimes they don't work for one reason or another in a new release. So lots of little things can go wrong that can really have a terrible effect on your workflow. We want to avoid that. So I want to share just briefly a quick video that Apple released, but because this is Apple and because technically this is something that only certain people have access to, I'm not going to record it. It's kind of a silly video. It's very short. It's a minute and a half. I just want to show it to you and then talk briefly about Big Sur and actually show you what it looks like. But I'm not going to record it because I don't want Apple legal coming after me because I posted some video of their video that
account, and then I need to log into a client's Office 365 account. Well, I can't do that if I'm using the same browser. Those are going to conflict and they're going to get confused. So by opening that private window, or that incognito window, that's essentially sandboxed from everything else. So all of the cookies and information that are already stored from my session in my personal Forget Computers Microsoft account are, there's a wall between that and that private window. So now I can open up, susiesapples.com. I can go there and get into that admin panel without any conflicts. So that's always a good thing to try. And another thing with private windows or incognito windows, by default, generally they have all extensions disabled. So you can try a private window if you are only using one browser, or an incognito window if you're using Chrome, to see if that will allow the website to work, because by default all extensions will be off. Yes, Chad.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
If I'm working from home and I'm using my own, personal computer, or if I'm using a work computer, is this a good tool if I have to let my kid use my computer?
A private window?
Yeah.
No. I would say no to that. I would. I mean, you could, but I would suggest probably creating a separate user account if you have to let your kid use your computer. But in general, we probably shouldn't let our kids or anyone else use our work machines. That's my answer. I don't know if that's correct.
Ideally, but it's good to talk about things that people might interpret as options because they don't, they simply might not know. Like, I would imagine that there's some folks at home that are, maybe using devices that aren't sanctioned, and it's a tough thing to address. And is someone who is doing that may hear this and say, "Oh, private window. Maybe every time I let Susie use my Lappy to do her games, I could do that." Why is a private window not a good choice for a situation like that? What does it do and what does it not do? We talked about that a little bit, but maybe we should talk about it in a little more depth.
Well, yeah. I mean, what it would do potentially. Let's say your kiddo has to log into some portal. I don't have kids, so I'm not sure how all this works. But if they need to log in somewhere,
kids just do whatever you say, Wyatt. That's how it works.
They do. Okay. Well, imagine this. Imagine if I let my roommate use my Lappy, and I think, oh, well, I'll just open a private window so he can't see my email or log into anything. It's just using an email. He can do his own thing, and then he logs in his email or whatever, and he clicks on like maybe something he shouldn't have. Is that private window going to help protect my computer from his choice?
No, sir.
No,
it is not.
Yeah, I think this is a real misnomer, right? This private window business,
it is.
incognito window. I mean, a lot of people don't even know about it, but if you look under File in any web browser, you're going to see some form of it. Safari says new private window. Chrome says new incognito window. And honestly, I would use it as a troubleshooting step, and that's about it. So if anyone ever says, well, whether it's us or any other company trying to help you says, why don't you just clear your cache and reset your browser? Well, yes, you could do that, but you are going to give up that history that you've accumulated, which can be pretty helpful on a day-to-day basis. So the first step is use a private or incognito window and just see if it fixes it or not. And then maybe you can go deeper if you have to by a complete reset.
But using a private window or a incognito window isn't really a layer of security that it may imply.
No, it is not.
So there's no reason to like live in that every day, right, Chad? Like,
that's exactly right, and that's kind of what I was getting to, because I know people that do. I know people that do that, and they often express that as something they're very proud of. That they go through the trouble, they don't save passwords, and they're doing some things that are very, very good, right, in terms of operational security, or OPSEC as we call it, right? But one of the things that they're paying for that, or moments of their lives they're never going to get back, right, and jumping through those hoops all the time. And so we talk about, ways to minimize that hassle, or friction, or whatever you want to call it, right? It's just makes things friendlier. And the friendlier, we've learned over the years that the friendlier we can make these workflows, and the friendlier we can make these things to remember and use and be easy, as easy as we can, the more we elevate people's overall security and clarity. Communicating about that clearly is a big part of that. And so I'm glad we took the time to explain what private or incognito means and what it doesn't mean.
Well, and to both of your points, and to something Ben mentioned there, I have been on with clients and noticed that every tab they have open is private. And they're not doing that to try to hide from the employer or anything. But they think that it's more secure. And as we've just discussed, it's really not.
No.
And it doesn't protect you really anymore either, Chad. To your point, if I had a roommate and he or she came in and opened a private window, got on Facebook, accidentally clicked on a malicious link, that payload's going into my account, my user account, my computer. And especially because I'm an administrative user on my computer. That's another thing when we're talking about kids using computers. I would suggest that kids are always using standard user accounts and do not have administrator privileges, so that those types of things don't happen. But that's another rabbit hole, so we won't go down that now.
Because they're going to be pulling on your pant like, hey, Dad. Hey, Dad. Hey, Dad.
Is that happening right now? Is that happening right
The
Not at the
now?
um,
moment.
Okay.
the other thing I want to mention about browsers, because I am really guilty of this, is having too many tabs open, too many windows open.
Sure.
Oh,
You know,
I wanted to touch on this, Ben, but I'll let you keep
okay,
going.
go no, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, to maybe what Ben's going to talk about, but browsers, each browser has its own set of needs from a computer. And some browsers are far more, infinitely more resource intensive. And to that end, if you have 20, 30, 40, 50 tabs open and your fans are cranking, that's why. It's really hard on the system, on your RAM, especially when you have 50 tabs open in
Chrome's a
Chrome, for
hog.
instance.
Yeah.
Chrome is one of the heaviest resource intensive browsers. But I did want to talk about that as well. If you find that any given browser that you're using is your machine's not performing well, you're getting beach balls, you're having to force quit things, you're having to restart to get things to work.
Right.
Try a different browser. There's other browsers that are lighter weight out there. And Ben, I didn't mean to interrupt you about your
No, no,
tabs there.
that's fine. I just know it's something. I know I have a problem with it. I know I need to learn how to deal with my web browser
Ben has
windows.
a tab
Uh,
problem.
yeah, I tend to just go until basically, until my fans kick on or something's not working. Then I realize, holy cow, look how many windows I have open. And I close them all down or quit the browser, relaunch, but not relaunch all the windows.
Right.
I see there's a question. Chad, were you gonna? Well, I was gonna say the question is, now that browsers are helping block trackers, would you continue to use other extensions?
That's an
And I think
excellent
that's a bit of
question.
a it's a great question, and I think you're going to find different answers for that. Like I personally am more of a minimalist. I like to run it clean and use just the bare essence of what Apple gives me, and then add. I add one password, and I think I've added some other tools because I needed to get something done, and it was beneficial. But then I'll go back and occasionally discover I don't need those, and I'll strip them back out. So it's finding that balance of what you feel comfortable with. But certainly, maybe these new features built into browsers can help eliminate third-party extensions. Maybe it's
Well,
too early to tell.
this is a very synchronistic moment we just had here, because I just opened Safari.
Hmm.
All I have installed in Safari is Ghostery. We've got a nice banner ad here for Say
Hmm.
Insurance. In Firefox, we don't.
Oh, because it blocked it.
In
Yeah.
Brave, we don't.
And that's what kind of powers my answer is, I tend to wait. I don't know, many of you are probably like me. You've run various degrees of, restrictive, boundaries inside
Mm-hmm.
your browsers. And sometimes there's overlap between them, and that can
Hmm.
work in really frustrating, sometimes frustrating ways, sometimes really awesome ways, collectively amplifying your overall capabilities for the reason Wyatt illustrated, because one site's blocking 144, one's blocking 7,
Right.
right? So which one's right, and
Yeah.
what is the definition of a tracker, right?
Hmm.
Well,
So
and
they all define that differently,
that's right. I
right?
mean, a tracker could be anything from Facebook to just some ad company. Well,
Right.
not that Facebook's not an ad company, but an advertising company. Uh, but difference being, here we've got a banner ad, and on the other two we don't. Um, I think if someone were to ask me that question, I would go along with Ben and say keep it as simple as possible, and
At first, yeah.
don't go crazy with extensions.
Yeah.
I think a great place to start, Chad, and you might not agree with this, or maybe you will, but the Electronic Frontier Foundation Privacy Badger I have used for a very long time. I have that installed on all of my browsers. I don't have AdBlock Plus installed anymore. I find that with Privacy Badger as just a baseline, and any browser these days, that's generally enough. I do use Ghostery too, and I won't go into all the extensions because there's a billion of them.
Yeah,
But also keep in mind that when you're using an extension, that extension has access to your browsing information, your browsing history. So if it's something new or it's a smaller company or something, your data is flowing through that extension as well. So is it even safe to be using that extension? You want to make sure that, the extensions that you're using are safe too. Is that safe to say, Chad, to a degree?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that's true. These extensions and these plugins and all these different add-ons, they're free.
Right.
So I don't know how many of you have seen the Social Dilemma documentary.
Yes, I was just going to mention that, Chad.
Yes,
yeah.
It was incredible.
Awesome. Watch it. Sit down with your kids. And your family, those of you that don't have to be so socially distanced, if you want to watch it with a group of people, throw up a sheet in the backyard and watch it with some friends, because it's real. And it's really important that everybody understands this stuff. And as we talk about free tools, whether it's a browser plugin or it's a free antivirus tool, a free antivirus tool can be just as much a detriment to your security and privacy as it gives you any value. And so we have to start thinking about being more intentional about the tools that we choose and vetting them, right? So to Wyatt's point, it's really important to keep in mind that, there's so many plugins out there for stuff, and the plugin world doesn't operate quite the same as, say, the App Store world. Right. I know the App Stores come under a lot of fire.
It's a bit more of a free-for-all, isn't it?
It's a total free-for-all, right? So maybe there's a happy medium somewhere between Apple, App Store, and the Google Play Store, right? Where it's just anarchy, right? Maybe there's a happy medium somewhere, but that happy medium, until there's something that we can really trust all the time, is ourselves. We really have to, use good judgment and vet some of these sources, and sometimes that involves a little bit of work, right?
Yeah, and also I want to mention the extensions, like having too many windows open. They can also cause issues if you have too many extensions, or if you're trying to troubleshoot with no extensions. So that's just an extra layer of complexity that maybe you don't want to invite onto yourself unless you know what you're doing. I did post in the chat the Netflix URL for the Social Dilemma, and awesome. I watched it this weekend. I'm sure it sounds like Chad watched it. I would recommend everybody watch it. It's certainly
tell everybody about it. Just let's watch it and talk about it. And we can't talk about it enough.
Yeah.
Something
we'll talk about that on our next podcast, Chad. Because there's a lot to talk about there.
Yeah.
One last thing I wanted to mention around browsers. Good idea, or another reason why you might want to have 2 to 3 browsers. And this is how I use browsers as well. I have one browser that's just stripped down bare. It doesn't have any extensions. It's just bare bones. It doesn't have any tracking protection turned on, nothing. So that I can use for sites I trust, things for work, Microsoft Office, and things like that. If I'm going to NFL Fantasy, I'm going to use the browser that's loaded up with extensions and protections. If I'm going, if I'm just browsing in the personal sense, or, I'm going to my bank account or things like that, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do different tasks in different browsers. Different browsers work better with certain websites as well, but your task also might kind of drive which browser you end up using. And one last note I'll leave you on. Brave not only kind of behaves like Chrome, but the other thing I like about it is the ability to just flip this switch here. And as Chad pointed out, Firefox does have that now too. It's just a little harder to find. You've got to come in here to flip that switch off to kill all of the enhanced tracking protections. So thank you for listening. Happy browsing. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing.
Yeah.
And next week we'll talk about how to build a Faraday cage and use a dial-up modem to download the internet, only what you want to see, and view it safely.
Building the new cave with
we won't do
Ben
that.
Greiner.
So I've got some good news and some bad news. Good news is we're wrapping up here. Bad news is I didn't hit record after the video. Well, I did eventually, but it was several minutes after the video. So for those of you that joined us live, that's it. You got it.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for making the time to join us today, folks that joined. Thank you.
And for those of you who watch the recording, that's why there's this strange gap where I say we're going to watch the video, and then we come back in the middle of browsers and just throw it at you. So in summary, Big Sur looks fantastic, but don't be too eager to run it unless you have a play machine. browsers, get to know a couple browsers and just be aware of what you're doing. We all live so much in the browsers these days, right? With all the online applications, it really is an important tool, and we really do need more than one of them because it's clear that some people just optimize for certain browsers. I think that's what they develop for certain browsers, and that's why they don't always play well in all browsers. And we didn't even get to talk about Microsoft making a comeback with Edge. Microsoft
It's pretty
Edge.
good. Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
good. I mean, I don't know that I want to run Windows for it, but it's pretty great.
You don't have to run Windows. There's a Mac OS Edge. There's an iOS Edge.
Don't tell them that. Don't tell them that.
Yeah. Microsoft Explorer is back on the Mac.
Exploder. Internet Exploder.
Yeah. Well, there was a time where you had to run Windows Explorer.
It's true.
It was like the only thing that worked.
Yeah.
It was kind of discouraging at that time on the Apple platform because we didn't have many options.
Yeah.
And
well, it would be nice if they do code ActiveX into Edge and it runs on a Mac, and you can run ActiveX on a Mac without having to run a Windows instance. I don't know if that's possible, but that would be pretty amazing for a lot of folks out there that have to still use ActiveX for getting certain pieces of software. So
right.
Andy mentions Netscape Navigator. Yeah, those.
Yeah, I love
it. Gosh,
and Composer. Remember how you could write code? Like, it was one tool. It was one stop shop. It was so elegant. I miss it. There hasn't really been anything quite like that since. I mean, Microsoft tried to do it with what was that early web editing WYSIWYG tool that they had?
I don't know. Even Apple used to have something you could build web pages in.
That's right.
iWeb. .Mac, remember? With your .Mac box, you'd get iWeb and your email account. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
So
home site.
Let's see.
It wasn't a home
Big
site?
Sur.
Anyway,
Big Sur, browsers, and I had my little rant, which I think I did record about collaboration online.
Well, that's
so I think that's it. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll have a great week, and we'll see you next week.